Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Ministry, Moral Hygiene, out October 1st on Nuclear Blast. This album has 10 tracks, 47 minutes in length, and this the band's 15 full-length studio album. They are an American industrial band. Now, the structure of this album is definitely one of the highlights of the record. I love how they put it all together. This is an album that doesn't have breaks. The songs move from one into the other in a seamless fashion. You can barely tell where one track ends and where the next one starts. So it allows the overall sensation of the album to be very linear, to be very connected, very cohesive and balanced, making the playability of the album being absolutely uninterrupted from beginning all the way to the end. This doesn't mean that every single song sounds the same or feels the same. There's still going to be ebbs and flows from track to track, or even ebbs and flows happening within the songs themselves. The soundscape changes ever so slightly while keeping some of the same elements alive and well from track to track. So there is diversity within the sound of this record. There is diversity within the overall construction of this album. But the way these songs are put in order, the way they combine with each other, the way they merge some of their elements from one to the next makes the album feel as one. Almost like you're listening to one single track that has 10 chapters versus listening to 10 songs that make up an album. That is the beauty of this structure. Now, once you get into the sound, it's definitely an industrial metal album. It keeps the DNA of Ministry alive and well. It pulls in from, I would say, as far down as country and as far up as metal, and then everything in between. You're going to get a lot of different views, a lot of different styles, a lot of different approaches, a lot of different sensations, and even atmospheres as you progress through this record. But the album doesn't break or it doesn't stay disconnected, because obviously the structure helps that fluidity. The soundscape keeps a lot of the same elements alive. They're just coming from different angles, from different starting points. So there's enough on this album that allows it to have diversity and at the same time still feel balanced and as one. The soundscape itself, it's really crisp. I really like everything that went into it. It's an album that feels alive, that has great sound, very rich, very layered, a lot for you to digest. It's very thick in the volume that it carries and the footprint that it has. It's not a narrow sounding album. It's really wide. The sound feels big and perhaps even bigger as you progress into it. Some songs it obviously contracts a little bit in order to be more driven, more linear, and then there's other tracks where it expands a little bit because the track itself needs a little bit more room to breathe. That's the style of sound that you're going to get throughout this record. Now, within that sound, I pinpoint three main components that really drive the experience: the samples, drums, and guitars. I love the samples on this record. I really do. They didn't feel overbearing. They didn't feel overdone. They just felt right. I like the way they played with them. I like the comments that are introduced through these samples. I like the life that they give to the tracks. I like the fact that they bring a lot of the lyrical content into the forefront, making the song perhaps a little bit easier to understand as far as the theme of the track goes. So everything surrounding the samples on this record, in my opinion, was really well done, really well delivered. Sometimes they drive the experience of the song, sometimes they become a layer within the track, allowing themselves to kind of disappear in the midst of the atmosphere of the song itself. So they don't have a one-size-fits-all from beginning to end. They're very diverse in terms of the execution and the approach that they bring into the record. The drums, on the other hand, feel a little bit more consistent. They give power to the album, but they also ground the record. I didn't feel like the drums were overpowering at any given time throughout this album. They felt warm, they felt rich, they felt like they had a large sound, but at the same time very penetrating, specifically when it comes to the cymbals. I really like that more penetrating sound. It helps the overall atmosphere of the tracks, and it really helps drive the message home as far as some of the songs are concerned. So I like the more consistent approach from the drums. It allows the record to have a little bit of a red line all the way through it and not be disconnected across every single element. The guitars, on the other hand, a little bit more diverse. Very chunky, very driven, sometimes pulling into other arenas. Like I said, country, for example, pulling into that arena, or going into more of a rock-driven style, or then going pure metal and having a lot of heaviness and a lot of thickness and a lot of volume pushing forward. So the guitars are perhaps the dynamic motion of this album as far as the sound goes. They really drive the song where it needs to go. They really drive the theme of the song, and they drive the atmosphere of the song itself. So I like the diversity of approach. I like the fact that we didn't get just a chunky guitar mixed in with chunky drums and samples in order to create that industrial sound across every single song. I mean, you're gonna get it throughout the record, but it's not gonna be a one uniform style size that's gonna fit every single track. So I love the diversity that the guitars brought in a very subdued way. They're not in your face in terms of changes, in terms of what the influences are coming into the forefront. They just kind of merge well with everything else that's happening within the track. So the drum sound on this album does one thing, which is keep consistency alive, while the guitars, on the other hand, offer a little bit more diversity. Now, the vocals on this record are really interesting because I felt that they had two different sides to the same coin. On some songs, the vocals drive a little bit of the experience. They become the driver behind the steering wheel as far as the experience of the tracks are concerned. In some songs, they're so well merged, they're so well driven deep into the layers of the track that it almost feels more like a sample than just vocals. So I like these different nuances, I like these different styles because they're always there to suit the song and to serve the song in the best way possible, not necessarily just being a narrator of what the lyrical content is all about. So these two sides work really well throughout the record. It also allows the listener to feel like the songs have something different to offer at every single turn, allowing the album not to feel perhaps as repetitive from that perspective. I do think that the album has some repetitiveness into it, and that is more coming from the theme of the album itself. I mean, when you have an album that kind of goes towards one arena, it's hard for it not to feel a little bit redundant at times. So the message that comes across in this album, while being slightly different from song to song, they all fall under the same umbrella. And because they all fall under the same umbrella, it gives a sense of repetitiveness as you progress through it. It's almost like feeling like you've heard this message before, just coming from a different perspective, just coming from a different person. But overall, it just feels a little bit too much at times. I wish that there was a better way of staying within the theme of the record, but offering a little bit more of a different approach so that the tracks don't feel from a lyrical content and from a theme content perhaps a little bit stagnant from top all the way to the bottom. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Alert Level opening track. The samples on this track are absolutely perfect. The overall construction, the theme, the perspective that it has, the heaviness that the sound has, the way the drums and the guitars really work well together in order to give that strong presence to the track. The vocals merge perfectly into the picture. This is a song that feels aggressive at times, that it's heavy, that has a lot of intensity, and it's a song that really showcases what this album is going to be all about. This is the best opening track possible when you consider all the songs available on this record, because it has all the elements that we're going to see throughout the rest of the album all merge into one single song. Next, you have Sabotage is Sex, a more guitar bass driven song. I really like how these two elements take turns in driving the experience. Sometimes the guitars come in and they're heavy, they have a little bit of chunkiness to it, and they drive the experience forward, perhaps accelerating the experience within the track. But most of the song is driven by the bass, and the bass slows things down. It brings a little bit of a darker atmosphere to the track itself. It feels slightly different. It has this it has a different flavor all around. So it's a song that, while shooting from the hip, specifically when the guitars come in, it always has this yin and yang motion between what the bass is doing and between what the guitars are doing. I love this dynamic between the two elements, but it's not the only thing that I love about this song. This is my favorite song as far as the vocal track is concerned. The vocals merge perfectly with the dynamic of the track. They merge perfectly with the sound. They feel just like a perfect layer squeezed in between. And at times the vocals come across so haunting, so dark, it almost gives you chills. So the dynamic motions that are present in the vocal track throughout this song don't stay stagnant, don't stay still. They evolve as the song evolves, as the song progresses. I love this track more so because of what the vocals are doing, but I also like that dynamic between bass and guitars. Last but not least, We Shall Resist. Very dark, atmospheric, sample driven track. That's how this song comes across. It's really a sample driven song. There's other elements in it. The vocals are merged into the sample, so sometimes it's hard to tell where a sample ends and where the vocals start. I like that dynamic. It creates a little bit of an ambiguous vibe throughout the track, but that dark atmosphere, that dark presence that the song has, driven by the samples, driven by the overall sound that comes off of those samples, really becomes the staple of this song all the way throughout. There is a midpoint where the song gains heaviness, where there's this burst of energy and aggression. It kind of trickles in a little bit towards the last third of the track, but it starts to dissipate and that overall darkness takes over again, and that becomes kind of the fingerprint, or at least the thing that you walk away feeling after you finish this song. You just walk away from this song understanding how dark this track really is in terms of the soundscape, the atmosphere, how those samples merged with the vocals. This is it. This is Ministry with Moral Hygiene, out October 1st on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.